I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised.
I can't find who left it, but one of you guys left a link in one of my last videos that pointed me in this direction. So thank you. I made a video last September called Billionaires Dinner Party about the Edge Foundation, in which Jeffrey Epstein was a member. He even has his own little member bio page. Financier and science philanthropist. And Epstein also attended at least a few Edge Billionaires dinner parties with other guests like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Sergey Brin, Salar Kamangar, then CEO of YouTube, Mayer, who the following year left Google to become CEO of Yahoo, and Ann Wojcicki, Brin's then wife and CEO of genetic testing startup 23andMe. And we all know who her sister is.
Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
And John Brockman, the man behind the Edge, was an important networker for Epstein. In the 1960s, he was a part of the New York multimedia scene, centered around John Cage, Jonas Mekas, and Andy Warhol. He became rich and famous in the 80s when multimedia art and new technologies turned into big business. Brockman became an agent for books by physicists, genetic researchers, and computer scientists. He marketed them like pop stars. In the 90s, his publishing company was the center of a global network of scientists, artists, and media managers, who he refers to as the digerati, a cyber elite that successfully combined multimedia and business. John Brockman's network, the digerati. I'm not going to read them all, but they have interesting nicknames like the Connector, the Marketer, the Pragmatist, the Scribe, the Coyote, the Maestro, the Scout, and the software developer, Bill Gates. He came to New York in 1963 and began his career as an investment banker.
I was walking through Central Park one day, playing my banjo, and along comes Jonas Mekas with his little 8mm camera, and he starts filming me. We started to talk, and within a day, I was the new director of the Filmmaker Cinematheque, and I quit my job. And he said he wanted to put together a festival based on cinema, but incorporating other arts. And that was the mandate, and he made some suggestions. We thought about it, talked about it, and it was up to me to put it together. And so I called it the Expanded Cinema Festival. And I went to Rauschenberg, Oldenburg, Namjoon Paik, the USCO group, Carolee Schneemann, dancers, artists, poets, audiovisual people. And the only requirement was cinema somehow was incorporated into the piece. Just a total rearranging the senses. You didn't know what you were looking at. And all these people were experimenting with media. They were dealing with technological stuff. You know, nobody was talking about cybernetics at the time, but they were all reading McLuhan. Rauschenberg told me about McLuhan, suggested I read it. Then Cage handed me a copy of Cybernetics by Norbert Wiener and said, "This is something for you." Because I was extremely interested in notions of feedback and nonlinearity. I got a call from A.K. Solomon, who was head of biophysics at Harvard, and he had read about the Expanded Cinema Festival. Said, you know, we have all these scientists up here at Harvard and MIT, and a group of us would like to invite a group of artists to spend a couple of days in a seminar, to talk about mutual interests. So I was invited to put this together, which I did. And then they took us to see the computer. There was a room, and everybody there was wearing white coats, and they were cold, and we were cold watching the computer, and all these cards and file cards, and I just stood there like a kid with my nose against the window, and it was so exciting.
John Brockman gave the emerging cybernetic project a hip, civilian, countercultural aura.
J.Z. Young, an Oxford biologist in Doubt and Certainty in Science, said we create tools and then we mold ourselves through our use of them. And I read that in like 1964, and something went off. And I suddenly realized that reality isn't this thing in front of us on a proscenium stage. It's a movable feast. We are creating technologies. Then we are the technologies. It's not your heart is like a pump. Your heart is a pump. It's not your brain is like a computer. Your brain is a computer until the next thing comes along. Now you're a neural net, or now you're an information system.
He was central to the cybernetic project and pushed for the total monetization of the internet.
And, the circles widened. So there was Heinz von Forster, who was the dean of the world cyberneticists. There was Gregory Bateson, Stuart Brand. Almost all these people were authors, as I was. I'd read all their books. And no one in New York had a clue that there was something happening, that there was a consciousness or mindset that had evolved, and you could connect all these people. Like, you can connect this and this. There are ways to put it together.
Yeah, with glue, tape, a stapler.
And to see a cohesive whole, and they were best-selling authors, and they were getting screwed by the publishing industry. So I was dragooned into becoming an agent because I had a business background, and they said, why don't you just go back and look after our interests? It'll take you an hour a day. And I thought it would be a nice way to pick up some money while I wrote books. And I found out very quickly that I was sitting on an oil well and I couldn't control. And that was 30 years ago.
In 1993, John Brockman's network is hit by a bomb attack. The victim is computer scientist David Galanter. The FBI arrests a former mathematics professor and graduate of Harvard University, Ted Kaczynski, as the perpetrator. David Galanter is an American artist, writer, and professor of computer science at Yale University. In 1993, he was sent a mail bomb by Ted Kaczynski, known as the Unabomber, which almost killed him and left him with some permanent disabilities. He lost his right hand and his right eye was permanently damaged. The package exploded shortly after 8 a.m. at the Computer Science Center at Yale in New Haven.
In 1993, someone attacked your network. We talked about your network, and David Galanter, one of your fabulous writers, received a letter bomb from the Unabomber.
Right.
Why do you think he was a target?
Well, I know he was a target. This madman, criminal madman, would read the New York Times, and a lot of the people he picked as targets were people that John Markoff had profiled. So Galanter was the subject of one of the biggest profiles ever in the Times in 1991, and I'm sure that had something to do with it.
But the Unabomber, he studied in Harvard, and he was a mathematician.
Yeah, and he's a sick criminal. I wouldn't have a serious discussion about this guy. He doesn't rise to the level. I think he's a guy that wrote this manifesto that he couldn't possibly get published because it's written so badly and it's so flawed. So in order to get it published, he killed people. End of story. People can have arguments about environment and science, but you don't need to kill people to make your point. And I wouldn't dignify him by discussing him any further. Let's change the subject.
You don't want to talk about it, but I will. Ted Kaczynski entered Harvard on a scholarship in 1958 at the age of 16. A classmate later said that Kaczynski was emotionally unprepared. Quote, they packed him up and sent him to Harvard before he was ready. He didn't even have a driver's license. As a sophomore, Kaczynski participated in a study described by author Alston Chase as a, quote, purposely brutalizing psychological experiment led by Harvard psychologist Henry Murray. Subjects were told they would be debating personal philosophy with a fellow student and were asked to write essays detailing their personal beliefs and aspirations. The essays were then turned over to an anonymous attorney, who, in a later session, would confront and belittle the subject, making, quote, vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive attacks using the content of the essays as ammunition, while the electrodes monitored the subject's psychological reactions. These encounters were filmed, and subjects' expressions of anger and rage were later played back to them repeatedly. The experiment lasted 3 years, with someone verbally abusing and humiliating Kaczynski each week. Kaczynski spent 200 hours as part of the study. Kaczynski's lawyers later attributed his hostilities towards mind control techniques to his participation in Murray's study. Some sources have suggested that Murray's experiments were part of Project MKUltra, the CIA's research into mind control. Chase and others have also suggested that this experience may have motivated Kaczynski's criminal activities. You think? Well, it all kind of works out, headed for that scientific dictatorship. But that's how it is living in a brave new world order.
You got to eliminate that compliance, and you make it a mandate. And then you do training, particularly in the city, I'll call them licensing departments, whether it's zoning, buildings, housing will be impacted by it, planning certainly. And you pick the people to run those agencies and the deputies that are pledging allegiance to the new world order.
Fucking stoned.
I got